This video is brought to you by these YouTube members. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Hello everyone and welcome to the top 10 tech autoers on Bleach Brave Souls. Now I actually really enjoy making the auto lists, as I often find myself autoing in the game, because either I don't have time to actually play, or I really need to max out a certain character for a video. Regardless of the reason though, I do think it's important for everyone to have a character that they use specifically built for autoing, and so I made this list. Please keep in mind that you can pretty much auto with just about anyone, as long as you build them correctly, and this video is more of a guide than anything else. With that said, let's begin.
行くぜカサタイバー俺から逃げられると思うなよ
Now we're starting off the list with Kukaku Shiba. Kukaku has a really high attack of 773 as well as a plus 20 bruiser, flurry, and poise. She can also deal debilitating burn with all of her attacks including her normal attack, and since she has flurry it hits twice as much, increasing the opportunities of inflicting burn. Kukaku also has long reach, which increases the range of her normal attack, something that's very useful for a normal attacker, especially when autoing. Now when a character autos, they kind of use their strong attacks whenever, and while hers may not deal that much damage because she only has a plus 30 berserker and her SP isn't that high, they do have decent range and they can inflict burn, so it's not like they're completely useless. Kukaku also has a 16% damage reduction soul trait that can be stacked up to 76%, increasing the durability of this character. She's also a no affiliation character, and right now there's not a lot of events that have enemies with no affiliation killers, meaning that you could safely take her anyway. Finally, she has a Narankar killer. I'm so glad we're past the days where if a character had flurry, it pretty much meant they had to have in either a Spada or Captain Killer. I mean, we still get some of those characters now, but they are a lot less common.
後のことなんざ考えて出し惜しみしたらぶち殺すぞ
Now if you're gonna control a character, I would say that Kukaku is better than Kenny, since she has long reach and can inflict burn, plus she's got an extra sprinter. That said, this is an auto list, so I have to approach things a little bit differently. The Can't Fear Your Own World version of Kenpachi has a really high attack as well as a plus 40 bruiser, a plus 50 berserker, flurry, and poise. Now obviously he can benefit from long reach, since even though he has a gigantic sword, he doesn't exactly have the best reach with it. Still, when he hits, he does a massive amount of damage thanks to that plus 40 bruiser and flurry combination. And thanks to that plus 50 berserker, his strong attacks will also deal an okay amount of damage despite his SP not being that high. His strong attack 2 in particular is a vortex move, and while it is the worst kind of vortex move, a static one that takes forever to resolve, it can actually come in handy in autoing since it traps enemies in one spot and keeps him there to either be slaughtered by Kenpachi or to get him out of his way while he takes out other enemies. As I mentioned, Kenny also has poise. Normally when a character has poise, the only real way to stop them is either to freeze them or to paralyze them, the two worst things to encounter when autoing. Luckily, Kenpachi is completely immune to being paralyzed, which not only adds to his survivability, but also makes him a bit faster. Like Kukaku, he also has a Narankar killer and a damage reduction soul trait that can be stacked up to 76%. Unlike her though, and anybody else on this list, he is a potion drop character, which is actually valuable in this list considering a large portion of your autoing time is likely because of inheritance though. So yeah, he could definitely be better, he could definitely be faster, but like him or not, he is a pretty good autoer.
Senbonzakura Kageyoshi.
Next up we have the remake of Senbonzakura. Now I've always been a fan of this character's design. I'm glad we got a remake of him. I wish he was something other than tech just because the last one was tech, but what are you gonna do? Senbonzakura has a really high SP as well as a plus 40 bruiser, flurry, and poise. He's also got a damage reduction soul trait that can be stacked up to 80%, and he's got berserker at 50, so his strong attacks will deal some damage despite his low SP. This character is also a ranged character, meaning he's a bit safer than most since he can attack from a distance, but historically ranged characters are also a bit slower, unless of course they have guard break, which he doesn't. He does however have follow-up, which is an ability that allows you to hit enemies even if they're prone. It is a very useful ability and one that does speed up this character. However, it is an ability that isn't fully taken advantage of if the character is autoing, which is exactly what this list is about. It's still useful in it, don't get me wrong, but when autoing it's more of a happy accident kind of thing. Still, it adds to this character's usefulness, and it helps make him a great auto character.
この炎からは逃げられねえ永遠に眠れ行こうぜ
Next up, we have the Desert Society version of Ichigo. Now, if you've seen him in one of my lists before, you'll know he is one of my favorite characters to use, as he is now my go-to boss killer. but he's also an exceptional autoer. This version of Ichigo has a really high attack as well as a plus 20 bruiser, flurry, and not poise. Yeah, sadly he doesn't have poise, meaning that if he's attacked, he does stagger. And any enemy attack can also interrupt his normal attack, which is a bit of a bummer. But it's not the end of the world. He does, after all, have a 16% damage reduction link that can be stacked up to 76%, and his strong attack 2 is a heal move, meaning that not only is he not taking that much damage, but if he takes too much damage he can actually heal it, greatly increasing his durability. Now funny enough, this character actually does less damage with his normal attack than all the other characters you've seen on this list so far, if only by a little bit for some of them. That said, he is far more likely to be able to deal more damage in the long term, since all of his attacks have a chance to inflict debilitating burn, and unlike Kukaku, his normal attack hits a total of 16 times per enemy, as opposed to most other characters with flurry, whose normal attack strings usually hit about 8 times. This greatly increases the chance of him inflicting burn, and really helps with any enemy who can guard, since again, this is an auto list, and characters don't always use their strong attacks when they're supposed to break guards, so having a character that can get the enemy's health down by burning them can really come in handy. I'm really bummed that we didn't end up seeing more of the Desert Society this year, though I still have a little bit of hope. They did kind of delay Spirit Society and White Day, so there's a chance that we'll still get this year, or maybe early next year.
まだ俺を倒せると思っているのか。残念だ。みんな。
Next up we have the newest tech character, the resurrection version of Ulquiorra. Now arena characters typically have poise, which is usually good for autoing, so expect to see them in these lists. Usually poise is reserved for characters with a high attack stat, but on occasion we do get some with a high SP, such as this Ulquiorra. Not only does he have a really high SP, but he's also got Berserker at 40%, a strong attack damage link of 20%, a strong attack recharge ability of 12%, Frenzy, and Havoc at 20%. This means that not only are his strong attacks gonna deal a massive amount of damage, but they also cannot be interrupted, and they have really good range. The strong attack 1 being a beam shot, the strong attack 2 being a hybrid vortex move, and the strong attack 3 encompassing the area of beyond full screen, despite it not being a full screen attack. As I mentioned, his attacks deal a massive amount of damage, and they have the potential to deal even more damage because they can all inflict debilitating weakening. He also has Enervator, meaning that he can inflict weakening just by existing, which for autoing is really useful, even though it is kind of random. To top things off, he not only has a Soul Reaper killer, which is still the best killer in the game, but he's also got an ability that lets him dodge Soul Reaper damage 50% of the time, which is absolutely crazy for autoing, and it makes him potentially the best character to auto with if you're going up against just Soul Reapers. That said, this list isn't just against your specific killer, it's against all autoing, since there are a lot of areas when you're going up against more than one affiliation of enemies. Not to mention that while he does deal a massive amount of damage with his strong attacks, his normal attacks are another story. He only has a plus 20 bruiser, and again, it's autoing, and characters are going to use their strong attacks whenever characters feel like they should use their strong attacks. So there's going to be a lot of using strong attack 3s to take out one individual enemy with barely any health left. Despite that though, he's still probably one of your best options to take against Soul Reapers.
大丈夫。すぐに終わるから。
Now at this point there's probably some people typing, complaining about me putting Nel ahead of Ulquiorra, because Ulquiorra is better, and they're right, he is better, but again, this is an auto list and they don't get that, but that's okay, because that's just the nature of these lists. This Nel is a really impressive character. She has a super high attack of 773. She also has a bruiser at 50%, and an ability that increases the amount of damage Tekarankars deal with their normal attack by another 20%. She also has an ability that increases the melee damage she deals by 10%, bringing the total of her normal attack damage increase to 80% before flurry. This makes her the hardest hitting normal attacking character on this list so far by a pretty fair amount. She also has poise, meaning she can't be stopped unless she's frozen or paralyzed, and it's really just paralyzation because she's completely immune to being frozen. Nell also has some pretty decent range on her strong attacks, which normally wouldn't matter since her SP isn't that high, but she does have a berserker at 60%, and it is still considered melee damage, so it increases by another 10%, meaning her strong attacks actually increase by 70%, which at that point you might as well not champion. She's also got a damage reduction soul trait that can be stacked up to 76%, and she's got an Arankar killer, meaning that while she doesn't have guard break, she doesn't necessarily need it against Arankars, since none of them can resist melee attacks anyway. She's one of the most consistently hardest hitting normal attackers in the entire game, and her poison resistances make her pretty fast too. We do have a Ginjo Giriko banner coming up soon, and she's a filler in it, and I'm tempted to summon in that banner for her alone.
I am #1 Tenpaku creator!
ジャンボクの刀は一振り一冊さ。
Next up we have Oetsu. Oetsu has a really high attack of 778, as well as a plus 40 bruiser, a strong attack recharge link, flurry, and that's it. He does not have poise, which is a bummer, since having poise would likely put him higher on the list. Still, it says a lot about his abilities because even without it, he ended up at number 4. While he may have a lower multiplier than Nel, he can actually deal more damage if his strong attack 2 boost move is active. It has enhancer, meaning it increases the length by 10 seconds, and it's also a vortex move that surrounds him. The vortex move doesn't exactly make up for poise, but it definitely does help since it staggers the enemies around him. This boost move also increases his defense by 33%, letting him live longer, and thanks to that strong attack recharge link, it comes back to him faster. Whether he chooses to use it or not is completely up to the computer though, since again, autoing. Still, even without the boost active, he deals a massive amount of damage. He also can't exactly be blocked thanks to his guard break, which is one of the main reasons he ended up so high, since the guard break not only applies to Soul Reapers, which he has a killer towards, but also any other enemy that can block melee attacks. It makes him a lot faster, and it helps out with his strong attack damage too, since it doesn't get absorbed to break the guard. He may not have that high of an SP, but he does have a plus 50 berserker, so it's not like they're doing no damage. Finally, he's also completely immune to being paralyzed, which is a great thing for a character with a Soul Reaper killer to have. I do think some other characters on this list that I mentioned already have a bit more durability than this character, just because they can resist damage or heal themselves or whatever, but he easily outspeeds them and outdamages them, which at some point does tip the scales to his favor.
ではどうぞ。スペシャルな今日の出会いと君の瞳に乾杯。
Next up, we have the White Day version of Shuhei, who's absolutely crazy when it comes to normal attack damage. He not only has a crazy high attack of 785, but also a plus 30 bruiser, a normal attack damage link of 20%, an ability that increases the damage tech Soul Reapers do with their normal attack by another 20%, and an ability like Nel's that increases range damage by 10%. Just like her, this brings his total normal attack damage increase to 80% before flurry. But it doesn't exactly stop there, because all of his attacks have a chance to inflict debilitating slow, which one is awesome for autoing, since slow, but 2, if an enemy is slowed, which is extremely likely since he also has Shackler, which can randomly inflict slow to enemies around him, he ends up dealing another 40% extra damage across the board, meaning that against slowed enemies, he actually deals 120% more normal attack damage before flurry, which makes his attacks hit twice. All this while being at a distance since he is a ranged character. Shuhei also has poise, meaning he can't be staggered, and the only real way to stop him is to paralyze him since he's completely immune to being frozen, which is good because he's got a hollow killer. Speaking of which, he's probably the best character to auto with if you're going against hollows, since he's got a 50% chance of their attacks missing him. Yes, Ulquiorra has this for Soul Reapers, but when it comes to autoing, it's a bit better on a normal attacker.
僕のシュリフト。ええ、アンチサーシス。手出しは不要だ。
Next up, we have the 1000-Year Blood War version of Uryu. Now this is actually an interesting position, because up to a certain point, I would actually put this character at number 1. I'll get to why when I get to the actual number 1, but for now let's focus on him. Now damage-wise, there's much better characters. That's not to say he doesn't deal a lot of damage, because he does. He has a really high SP, as well as Frenzy, Guard Break, Havoc at 20, and a plus 40 Berserker. Not to mention the plus 40 Bruiser, making his normal attack actually usable, but he is a bit on the slow side, since his attacks are really more meant for crowd control than damage, even though they can deal damage. While his strong attack 3 is a full screen, his strong attack 2 is a hybrid vortex move that gathers enemies in one spot before pushing them back. Then we have a strong attack 1, it just knocks enemies back and hits multiple times. These abilities are good for a ranged character and do help him auto to a point, but what really helps him out and what places him so high on this list is his ailment reversal ability, that not only deflect the enemy status ailments back to them, but also heal Uryu for 25% of his total health. You could literally stand in the middle of inheritance zone and the enemies will not only heal you but take themselves out. I know this because one time I actually did try this, and the enemies just couldn't take me out no matter how much I just stood there. Now that's not to say he's immune from status ailments, because he's not. He's still affected by floor hazards, and the attack that inflicts a status ailment will still deal the initial damage before healing him. That said, if you build him correctly, that's not really a worry, since with the right accessory, any ailment attack can heal him up to 50% of his total health. He's one of the safest options in terms of autoing in the entire game. You may have to wait a little longer for him to get things done, but with the enemies having your back, you can bet that he will complete the mission. Now here are a few honorable mentions, but keep in mind you can pretty much take any character, since the most important part about autoing is how you actually build the character. Gift ベラ石からは絶対脱出不可能だ。
リフトリング
サーベルズ不在のロンドンを守ってがっつり目立ってサーベルズに昇進するんだから。はぎれ
面倒やっちゃな。
逃げられると思うな。メンテスでキブロン。よく見とけ。これが俺の力だ。
Now finally, at number 1, we have the Artworks version of Ichigo. Now earlier I said that Uryu should be number 1 up to a certain point, and I stand by that. That point being, as soon as this Ichigo can take out all enemies in very few shots. So pretty much until you have him like 10-10-10. Since before that, he would still be a really good autoer, but maybe not number 1. With high enough stats though, this guy absolutely destroys, and he does so very quickly. He has a really high SP of 843 and Berserker at 60%. He's also got Frenzy and a boosted strong attack recharge link of 14%, meaning he has the potential to not only hit extremely hard but also spam his strong attacks. I say potential because again, it's autoing and the AI will use the strong attacks whenever it feels like. That said, resorting to his normal attack isn't a bad option either. Sure, it may not deal that much damage thanks to Bruiser only being at 20%, but he does have a decent attack stat for a high SP character. Not only that, his normal attacks actually have really good reach, despite not having long reach, and they're also incredibly fast. Not to mention, neither his normal attacks nor his strong attacks can be stopped thanks to his poise ability, which make him a really fast character. His strong attacks also have excellent reach thanks to his Havoc. His strong attack 3 is beyond full screen, his strong attack 2 is very near full screen, and his strong attack 1 is a hybrid vortex move that gathers enemies in one spot and delivers one final strike. All of his attacks can inflict debilitating weakening, and that strong attack 1 is especially likely to do so because it hits so many times. And because it is his strong attack 1, it's the one he'll be using most, which is great because it means someone will be weakened. This Ichigo is also completely immune to all status ailments, meaning both floor hazards and enemy attacks. This greatly increases the durability of this character, and combined with the poise, means that he cannot be stopped. He also has Marauder, which is both guard break and nullify melee resistance in one, and it makes it so that the only way to avoid this character's attack is to hide underground. Give him a Zeta pill, and even that option is gone. This Ichigo also has 2 killers of Soul Reaper and no affiliation, increasing the areas he's super effective when autoing in. But thanks to the Marauder, the poise, and the all status element immunity, with high enough stats you can take him anywhere, and he will be unstoppable. It's why he's the only character on this list whose position really only depends on his stats. Which, to be honest, it's not that hard to 10-10-10 a character anymore, which is why I felt it safe to put him at number 1. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for some more top 10 lists.